Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mark LeGrand. I head up the sales efforts at Quigley Transportation. I want to first of all thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us this afternoon. Many of you are aware that we committed to hosting a webinar each month. We started in January with hours of service and ELD monitoring. Last month was DQF requirements. And this month was actually a suggestion from one of the attendees in the first 2 months webinars. And the topic will be managing your CSA data and Fmcsa Portal. Want to start off with a couple of housekeeping rules. Today's not a sales call. My sales efforts here in 10 seconds is if you're curious about how we help other people, same spot as you with ratings, with managing data, with administration of compliance. There's information on our website. So that's it from a sales standpoint from my end. I wanted to, again, just thank you. We're going to jump right in. Brett's going to give us a nice overview, and then I'll come back on towards the end of our session together. I've got 4 questions that have been sent in from you in advance. If you have a question, something that's important to you, you can send it anonymously to Brett under the chat feature. So if we can help you out in any way, shape, or form today during this session, feel free to put your question in. And if you'd rather just reach out to Brett or myself afterwards, if that's more comfortable for you, you're welcome to do that. Just want to help you any way we can. So with that, Brett, I'd like to hand it back to you, and let's begin.
All right, thanks, Mark. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to participate in what is now our 3rd monthly webinar. This month, we're going to be focusing on managing your CSA data and your Fmcsa portal. These are 2 areas that I've found are often misunderstood or overlooked in fleet management and DOT compliance. So hopefully you'll gain a little bit of information today that will be helpful for you. But first, a little bit of background on myself and also Quigley Transportation Management Solutions. So myself, having over 40 years of experience managing 3 of the nation's 100 largest private fleets, I handpicked a team of consultants that I've worked with for years that demonstrated an excellent base of knowledge, work ethic, and a commitment to success. Together, we are leveraging our decades of experience helping smaller companies manage their DOT compliance and fleet management needs. As you can see, we state we're in the pain relief business. And what we mean by that is we're helping smaller clients relieve the pain associated with their DOT compliance and fleet management. And this could be through the administration of the programs. It could be financial pain, having to employ additional people or pay fines. Or what we're seeing with a lot of our clients today, where they come to us with compromised safety ratings, is that they're seeing a significant loss of revenue as a result of those compromised safety ratings. We also not only offer consulting services, but also a wide range of other DOT compliance and fleet management services that we can tailor to your specific needs. So with that, I'm going to stop my video so you don't have to stare at my face throughout the entire presentation. And we'll go on to the meat of the topic today. So as Mark mentioned, this material will be available to you after the webinar. So as a result, I won't be covering each slide in finite detail. However, if you have questions on any of the materials Mark said, you can submit those through the Q&A portion of the webinar, or if you think of something after the webinar is over, certainly feel free to email those to Mark or myself, and we'll research and get back to you as quickly as possible. As far as the agenda today, we're going to talk a little bit about industry statistics. We're going to go over the CSA program and what it means. Also ISS. This is an area or topic that a lot of carriers I found are not even aware of. And also the Fmcsa portal, and then finally we'll go into Q&A. Okay, statistics. According to the American Trucking Association, in 2018, there were approximately 37 million trucks registered and used for business purposes. Now, these exclude government and farm-related vehicles. So it's just commercial motor vehicles. The 4 million Class 8 trucks referenced here represents an increase of 2.6% from that number, from that class in 2018. So pretty significant increase year over year. Together, these vehicles traveled approximately 305 billion miles in 2018. As far as the number of carriers, there are approximately 1.8 million carriers in the US, and over 97% of these operate less than 20 trucks. So I thought that was pretty interesting. According to the Q1 transportation update published by McGriff Insurance Services, which you can find a link on our LinkedIn and web pages if you've not done so already, I encourage you to do so. Accidents involving large trucks have increased nearly 30% since hitting an industry low in 2009. This has resulted in rising insurance costs across the industry, with smaller fleets feeling the most pain. This year alone, rates are anticipated to increase another 8 to 15% on average, and those carriers with unfavorable loss history will see significant higher increases than these averages. Okay, CSA. So it's an acronym standing for Compliance, Safety, and Accountability. This is a program that Fmcsa established in 2010. It was originally referred to as CSA 2010, with the goal of monitoring and reporting on the safety performance of every motor carrier operating in the US. So every motor carrier should be monitoring their CSA data on a monthly basis. If you're not doing so, we can certainly assist you, but I cannot stress enough the importance of this. You'll hear me reinforce this many times throughout today's presentation. So I hope I don't become too annoying on that topic, but it's near and dear my heart, and it's extremely important. Okay, CSA is the program. So again, it's a program established by Fmcsa. SMS, or Safety Measurement System, is a system that is part of that the CSA program entails. And then there's Basics, or Behavioral Safety and Safety Improvement categories, which are the units of measure within this system and program. So the CSA data is organized into 7 categories, which are called the Basics, which is updated on a monthly basis. It's important to note that not only are violations counted, but also warnings that a driver may receive at a roadside inspection are treated the same as a violation. So we're in historically, if a driver was to receive a warning as opposed to an actual citation, really wouldn't give a whole lot of thought to it. But when it comes to CSA, it carries the same weight as a true violation or citation does. Okay, these violations and warnings are weighted based on time over a 2-year period, and also severity of the infraction. So the data is tracked not only by the carrier's DOT number, but also by the driver. So Fmcsa groups the carriers of similar size and exposure, forming what's called peer groups. So the carrier's performance in each basic is ranked based upon what percentage of their peer group is performing better than they are. Obviously, the lower percentage, the better. So as an example, if your company is ranked in the 70th percentile for hours of service, then 70% of your peer group is performing better than you are in this category. So if you're suffering from insomnia some night and you need some good reading material, I've provided a link here that you can click on and download the SMS methodology PDF file. And it's about 114 pages in length, and you'll really enjoy that for late night reading. So I encourage you to download that. Okay, the CSA Basics. So there are 7, as I mentioned, 7 basics. 7 main categories, and a little bit of some examples for each one. So unsafe driving. So examples of violations in this category would be moving violations, such as speeding, texting, or seatbelt violations. The next one being hours of service. So any hours of service or ELD violations that your driver may incur would be noted here. On the vehicle maintenance category, not only are maintenance related items such as brakes, tires, and lighting, which are the common ones that are found, but also improper load securement is included in vehicle maintenance. So one thing you'll find with vehicle maintenance, it's one of the higher percentage categories of violations in the CSA data, typically because it's one of the easiest for law enforcement to find violations, because they can spot it pulling or driving down next to your vehicle going down the road. But it's also, if you think about it, should also be the easiest for your drivers to prevent by performing thorough pre and post-trip inspections. So that's typically a pretty good opportunity for most carriers to improve upon, is training drivers on proper pre and post-trip inspections. The driver fitness category, this relates to our common violations here are driver license or medical card violations. So we spoke a little bit about this last month. On the controlled substance and alcohol, so drivers operating in violation of the drug and alcohol regulations. The crash indicator, this is a historical pattern of crash involvement, including frequency and severity, and also hazardous materials, which is a failure to mark, label, or placard in accordance with the regulations. So you'll notice the first 5 of the 7 that I mentioned are visible to the public, which includes your customers, competitors, insurance providers, as well as plaintiff's attorneys if you're involved in a civil lawsuit. There's also an 8th basic that is not visible to the public, which is insurance and other, and it's based upon findings during a compliance review, such as, so an example here would be operating a CMV without proper levels of insurance or failing to maintain copies of crash reports. Okay, for each of the basic categories, FMC has established minimum thresholds by carrier type. So you'll see a difference in the percentages by each type of carrier. So general carriers, hazmat carriers, or passenger carriers. So essentially, if you exceed the threshold in any basic, you're going to receive an alert for that basic. If you receive multiple alerts, this can easily prompt a focused and sometimes full DOT audit if you've never been through a DOT audit or had a full DOT audit in the past. Again, all the more reason to monitor this information on a monthly basis when it becomes available. Okay, while the severity weight of the violation remains static throughout the 24 months, the time weight declines as shown here. So in the first 6 months, it carries a weight of 3. The next 6 months, it carries a weight of 2. And then the second year, it carries a weight of 1. So I strongly recommend the following 3 actions to help ensure that you maintain an acceptable score in CSA. So 1, be aware of your data, access it on a monthly basis, provide proper training to your drivers. So not only on the program itself, but also specific issues that they're having that's causing the violations. And then also administer a corrective action plan. So one thing that DOT, when they come in and do an audit, they're going to want to see that you provide a progressive disciplinary plan to your drivers that have repetitive issues. So what they don't want to see is that you simply maybe issue a verbal warning, or in other words, slap a driver on the wrist every time they have a violation, and they never get anything worse than that. DOT will frown on that pretty badly. So one thing about it, if a declining CSA performance is left unaddressed, then essentially in order to improve your scores, you're simply gambling that your peer group will perform worse than than you will going forward. So I don't know about you, but I don't want to gamble on something that I have no control over. The severity weight of an out of service violations are much higher than those that are not out of service. And I'll show you a little bit of that going forward here. Okay, here's an example, the formula for how most of the basic scores are calculated. Essentially, it's the sum of the total time and severity weights divided by the total time weight. So what this does is factors in the clean inspections, which have no severity weight, but they have the same time weight as a violation does, so the 321. So as you divide the total sum of the time and severity weights by that, then you get credit for the clean inspections when a driver has those. Okay, accessing your data. So using the PIN number assigned to your company by the FMCSA, you can access your data at the website I've shown here. If you don't have your PIN number, if you've lost it, or you don't recall ever receiving one, you can request it through the FMCSA website. I've also included a screenshot showing the schedule of future data releases, as well as the snapshot dates that they cover. One thing to note here is that sometimes you'll find that inspections from previous periods appear for the first time in a later release. So this results from law enforcement agencies sometimes being delayed in uploading the data. So essentially, you always want to look back for new entries. So one thing we do after downloading the data into a spreadsheet, we use a VLOOKUP to easily identify any new entries from previous periods. So that's something that we would do on your behalf if you contract with us on that program. Okay, public information. So if you wanted to look up any of your competitors, or you wanted to look up your own company and didn't have a PIN number, this is essentially the information that you'd be looking at. So the public has visibility to this information. They can download the data. The only thing they don't have access to are to seeing which categories you have alerts in, as well as specific driver and vehicle information on the downloaded information. So in this case, you'll notice that this carrier shows as not being rated. So this is one of our clients, remain unnamed. This particular company had received a conditional rating as a result of a focused audit. As a for-hire carrier, they were losing in excess of 40% of their revenue due to the conditional rating. They just simply couldn't get the loads from their broker that they had been accustomed to receiving because of that conditional rating. So after several unsuccessful attempts to getting their rating upgraded, they requested our help, and we were able to get it changed back to a not rated within 2 months. So the other thing you'll notice here is the high out of service rates. So in this case, both the vehicle and driver, this carrier exceeds the national average on out of service rates, which is an indicator that a carrier may not be focused on their CSA data. Okay, private information. So here's the same carrier's information after logging in with their FMCSA PIN number. So in this example, you'll see that the carrier has 3 alerts in unsafe driving, hours of service, and vehicle maintenance. So first, I need to apologize for the eye chart here. I know it's kind of difficult to read, and I apologize for that, but I wanted to get the full screenshot on here. But just to give you an idea here, if you can't see it, their percentile in unsafe driving is 66%, and hours of service is 71%, which in both cases exceeds the 65% threshold that's been established by FMCSA for those 2 categories. And then their vehicle maintenance is 92%, which exceeds this category's threshold of 80% that was established by FMCSA. So as I mentioned, these alerts prompted a compliance review that resulted in this carrier receiving a conditional safety rating. Also, here you'll notice that eighth basic for insurance and other that I had mentioned earlier. Excuse me. You can also take a look at the another data view is historical, where it shows the performance over a period of time, and you can look at this on a monthly basis, which I've shown here. You can also look at it on a quarterly basis or a semi-annual basis. Okay, the information that you can download once you log in, or again, public information is available. You just won't get the specific vehicle and driver information, but which you'll receive on the once you log in with your PIN number. But this data covers 24 months, the previous 24 months. Here's what I mentioned about the out of service rating and the severity weight for an out of service violation as compared to other ones that don't carry such a high severity weight. So breaking this data down and ranking your drivers provides an excellent tool in identifying specific training needs, which I'll show you a little bit here in the next couple of slides. So this is the same carrier's data that's ranked by the driver. So by ranking the drivers, you can use this data in educating your drivers on the role they play in your CSA performance, which is critical in managing your scores. So not only did I show the violations, but I showed the number of clean inspections that each of the drivers received, which is also critical. I mean, drivers need to be rewarded when they go through an inspection and they receive a clean inspection, because that helps you as a carrier improve your CSA scores. One thing that I've also seen carriers do is incorporate the CSA performance as a KPI in their driver bonus programs. So that's something you might consider if you have a bonus program. Excuse me. Another thing to keep in mind and ensure that drivers are aware is that the violations, as well as the warnings, stay with them for 36 months, stays with the carrier for 24 months, but the driver for 36 months, and is visible to future employers of theirs through the Fmca's PSP program if you elect to sign up for that program. All right, here's another way of looking at this data by driver. So slicing and dicing the data enables you to drill down and identify specific areas of non-compliance by individual driver and tailor training to improve, specific declining trends. So these numbers represent the number of inspections or violations by category. Also, you'll notice that I included clean inspections in here again. So in looking at the data in this format, you can see specifically what areas each driver needs training in for each of the basics. And as I mentioned last month in our webinar on driver qualification files, the violations in the driver fitness are an indicator that the carrier is lacking a good driver qualification file audit and monitoring program. In some cases, not every case, but in some cases. So as you can see, driver 13 here. He's obviously one of the major drivers of their violations. He has no clean inspections, but he or she has at least one violation in every category. Okay, so over the years, I found that where many carriers are not familiar with the ISS system and how it can impact their CSA performance. So have you ever wondered how law enforcement selects which vehicles and drivers are going to inspect? Well, they use a system called the ISS, or Inspection Selection System. It's a numeric number that is derived directly from your CSA performance data, and it can change on a monthly basis, just as your CSA data changes. Now keep in mind, this can be a catch-22. So if a carrier, for example, that is not focusing on improving their CSA performance, that already has a high ISS score, they'll likely be selected for more inspections, which creates more opportunities for additional violations, further driving up their percentiles on ISS scores, which can ultimately increase their chance of a DOT audit. So all the more reason to get a handle on this and develop a very thorough system to ensure that doesn't happen to your company. So I'm looking at the carrier that I shared the data on earlier. Their ISS score, which is shown here, is a 96. So they are in the inspect category, which means that they're likely going to be chosen for an inspection by law enforcement if they get pulled through, if they go through a scale, or officer may be driving down the road and they may key in their DOT number and it pops up as an inspect. More than likely, they'll find a reason to pull them over and do an inspection on them. Okay, your FMCSA portal. So every carrier should register for access to their FMCSA portal. It will provide you more timely access to information on inspections than what the CSA website does. Keep in mind, the CSA website is only updated monthly. This here, you'll have visibility to inspection and crash data as soon as it's posted by law enforcement. So upon registering, you will need to select a designated company official, which will also have the ability to grant or rescind portal access to others, whether it be inside the company or, for example, our clients grant us access to their portals if we're managing their portal data for them. You'll also need this if you're going to file data queues to challenge erroneous data or qualifying non-preventable accidents for removal from your DOT number. So sometimes an officer will fat finger a DOT number and you'll get assigned a violation that truly isn't yours. So again, another reason why you want to monitor your CSA data on a monthly basis. And the only way to correct that is to file a data queue and provide all the information that's requested on that. Again, something that we can do on your behalf if you have interest in that. All right, with that, I will open it up to the Q&A. If we don't answer your question, if we can't answer your question, we'll certainly research it and follow up with you at a later date with the correct answer. Again, if you think of something after the call, don't hesitate to email Mark or myself, and we'll get back to you with an answer. So with that, Mark, I'll open it up, turn it back to you.
Okay. Thanks, Brett. First of all, thank you to the three individuals that shot me an email prior to today's webinar with the following questions. We might have addressed them, but I still would like to read them out loud. And if there's additional information you're looking for, just let us know. So Brett, the first question, this individual evidently has a CSA score they're concerned about. And they asked, is there anything they can do to improve it?
Great question. So the answer is certainly not an easy or simple one. It's somewhat complex, but the first thing to do is obviously ensure that you and everyone in your organization, as well as your drivers, are knowledgeable of the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations and the hazardous material regulations if those apply to your operation. Understand how your safety management contributes to your safety problems. So do you have a viable safety program? Are you enforcing your safety program? And if you need help with that, certainly we can assist you with that. Thirdly, make sure your MCS 150 is updated on a regular basis. It's required at a minimum every 2 years, or if you have any significant changes in your operation. So annual miles changing, number of vehicles, drivers, you want to update that because that can change the peer groups that you're placed in based upon that information. Also, as I mentioned countless times, is review your inspection and crash reports data and request the corrections as needed through data queues. And then, again, lastly, kind of reiterating the first topic is educate yourself and your employees on the regulations and industry best practices. So there's a lot of information out there on ways to improve CSA performance. Something we can certainly assist you with. One thing that we do for our clients that are subscribed to our program is that we will monitor their trends and give them recommendations on how they can improve their performance with those declining trends.
Okay, great. Thank you. The second question, and I have tried to be a mind reader with my family, wife and children, and I fail every time. So I don't want to assume here, but I recall an earlier slide about how many carriers have less than X number of trucks, and perhaps this is included or born out of that. Which carriers are included in the safety management system or SMS? So I don't know if that's tied to if I only have 2 trucks, do I have to be worried about this? Or if I have 20 trucks, do I have to be? But what carriers are included in this system?
That's another great question. So essentially, if you take a look at what the definition of a commercial motor vehicle is by interstate standards, to simplify it, it's anything with a gross vehicle weight rating or actual weight rating over 10,000 pounds, or hauls hazardous material that requires placarding. So that's really the vehicles that are included in this CSA data. Now, you get into, we talked a little bit about this last month, talk about the intra-state exemptions. So intra-state exemptions would not necessarily apply here, with the exception of hazmat. Hazmat on an intra-state basis is included in this data. So hopefully that answers the question. Essentially, it's most every, really any company that has a US DOT number, if you want to look at it that way.
Gotcha. Okay. And the last question I received prior to today, and if there are any other questions, we do have time available during this session. You know, we're 25 minutes to the end. If we end early, we end early and get back to your busy days. But if you do have a question that we haven't covered, feel free to submit that now. It only goes to Brett, myself, and you can submit it anonymously if you prefer. So the last question, I believe you covered, but again, just want to be sure. How long are violations or crashes kept on my SMS results?
Yeah, so we talked about this, and it's so it's 24 months for the carrier, but it's 36 months for the driver. And so again, if as a company, if a company registers for access to the Fmcsa PSP program, which is pre-employment screening program, it's a relatively inexpensive program that Fmcsa offers, where you can submit a request for a driver applicant, and you can see that driver's history of CSA violations going back 3 years. So if you think about that, if you're looking to hire a driver and CSA performance is one of your KPIs, hiring a driver that has a history of incurring a lot of CSA violations, you may want to take a second consideration on bringing that individual in your company. Or if you do, at least provide additional training so that they understand what problems, historical problems they've had that if they repeat those, it'll cause for your company. Now, keep in mind, the historical data, the historical violations for that driver do not carry forward to you, to your DOT number. It simply stays with the driver. The only thing that your DOT number reflects are violations associated with your DOT number. But this program gives you visibility on a driver applicant to what their back or past history has been on violations for the prior 36 months.
Okay. Thank you. So that was it on questions. I don't see any more have come in. Before I hand it back to you, Brett, to wrap up and close for us, I just want to share with everybody a couple things. One, everyone that registered.
Mark, I apologize. I do have some questions here that came in, so let me address those. So first question is, how do you get access to data queues on your portal? So once you are registered with the portal, for access to the portal, there's a section that let me just back up here once to that screenshot. Okay, so you see right here, the second one is highlighted here is data queues. So these are available FMCSA systems. So that goes with your profile. So if you don't have access to that, then when you need to, your designated company official needs to provide that access to you in order for you to have visibility to that. Okay, the next question is it possible to do away with the peer group measure? The HOS violations of others had put us over the threshold at the end of the year, and it affected our insurance coverage. Great question. And unfortunately, the only way to affect the peer group measure is if your operation has changed as far as your data points, as far as like vehicle miles traveled, number of vehicles or drivers, that will help determine, and then the number of inspections and violations you've had, that will all determine what peer group you fall in. So you can't get away from the peer group, but the hours of service violation of others had put us over the threshold. Yeah, so what that's telling me is that you had more violations than your peer group did in the hours of service category, driving yours up and putting you at hopefully not an alert status, but that's what would be that result. Okay, the next one is it required or a regulation requirement to register for the portal? No, there's no requirement. Simply best practice, and hopefully you've seen that what the benefits are of registering for the portal. There's no downside to register for the portal. There's no cost to it. Simply a method to gain more access to information quicker. All right, the next one is if a driver was involved in a crash and it was not deemed their fault, the other vehicle received the citation, does that accident negatively impact the score even if it wasn't their fault? So this gets a little complicated, and FMCSA came out with, short answer is historically, yes. If it met the definition of a DOT recordable crash, that affected your numbers. Within the last 2 years, I think it is, they came out with certain types of non-preventable crashes. For example, if your vehicle is hit from the back, rear-ended, then that is a qualifying accident that you can submit a data queue on and have that removed from your history. Another one is terrible to say, but suicide by truck, where an individual, they've determined that the individual, whether it be a motorist or pedestrian, intentionally committed suicide by causing a collision with your vehicle. Those would be considered a eligible crash that you could get reversed through data queue. There's others non-preventable crashes that unfortunately still count as in your numbers. So it's very specific. We can help you with that. If you have interest, certainly reach out to us and we can help. Okay, and the last question, in 2020, we had none, only in 2019. Okay, I'm not sure what that is. Certainly reach out to Mark or I with maybe some additional information on that, and we'll be glad to assist you in answering that question. So that's all the questions that came through, Mark. I'll turn it back to you now so we can wrap up.
All right, thanks. So again, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. This is a journey we're committed to try to add value to you each month throughout the year. Brett's going to share what we plan on next month hosting. If you would like a copy of the slide deck from January hours of service ELD monitoring that you don't have, let me know. I'll send that to you. It's a PDF format. And the same with February, the DQF requirements. Everybody that's registered for today's webinar, I will email by close of business tomorrow the PDF slide deck that Brett just took us through so that you can use it internally for any discussions with your team to help you any way, shape, and form we can. There'll also be a link to the video recording of this, the audio recording. If you would like that, I don't ram that down anybody's throat. If you would be interested in that, feel free to shoot me an email, and then I'll send that out to you on where you can find that on the internet. So with that, again, thank you. Brett, I'm going to hand it back to you for a wrap up and close, please.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Well, as Mark said, thank you again for your time and participation in today's webinar. Next month, I hope you join us. Hope you can join us. So it's going to be during the last week in April. We're finalizing exactly what day it's going to be, but we're going to have Pedigree Technologies, which is a provider of ELD and in-cab cameras, join us for an in-depth discussion on maximizing the effectiveness of your ELD system. So I've worked with Pedigree for a number of years. They're a very quality ELD provider. Even if they're not your provider of choice, I urge you to join. I think you can gain some insight into that, what we'll talk about. Until then, please be safe and let us know if we can be of any assistance with your transportation needs. I would also encourage you that if you have a specific topic that you think would be of value for these monthly webinars that you would like us to present on, feel free to email that to Mark or I, and we will take a look at that and see if we can add that to the list of the upcoming webinars. So again, thank you and have a great rest of your day. Take care.